You remember exactly where you were when the email came through. Subject line, salary adjustment. You opened it standing in your kitchen, coffee still hot. And there it was, a number bigger than you'd seen next to your name in years. For a second, you stood there. Then you did the math in your head, fast. This changes things, you thought. Finally, some breathing room. Maybe the credit card gets paid off. Maybe you stop checking your balance before you order coffee. You told a friend that week. You even started picturing it, a little cushion in savings, one less thing to worry about when rent came due. That was 6 months ago. Look at your account right now. Same tight week before payday. Same quiet dread opening the banking app. Same feeling like the raise went somewhere and you're just not sure where. You didn't buy anything reckless, nothing you'd call a mistake. And yet somehow, more money landed in your life, and your life quietly adjusted to swallow every bit of it. So here's the real question nobody hands you an answer for. If the money is higher, why does everything still feel exactly the same? There's a name for this, and once you know it, you start seeing it everywhere. It's called lifestyle creep. Sometimes people call it lifestyle inflation. Same idea either way. Your spending rises to meet your income almost every time, whether you plan for it to or not. It's not weakness. It's not carelessness. It's actually rooted in something psychologists have studied for decades called a hedonic treadmill. The idea is simple and a little unsettling. Humans adjust to almost any level of comfort, then reset their sense of enough right back to baseline. Get a bigger apartment, and within weeks, it's just your apartment. Get a nicer car, and the thrill fades until it's just how you get to work. Your brain doesn't stay impressed. It moves the finish line. So when your income jumps, your sense of what counts as normal jumps right along with it. The raise doesn't feel like extra money for long, because your brain quietly reclassifies it as the new baseline almost immediately. That extra room in the budget stops feeling like room at all. It starts feeling like rent. This is why the question from a minute ago has a real answer. It's not that you spent foolishly, and it's not that the raise wasn't real. It's that your idea of enough moved the moment your income did, usually before you even noticed it happening. And here's the part that matters most. This isn't something that happens only to careless people. It happens to careful, deliberate people too. It happens to people making 6 figures and people making $30,000 a year. The mechanism doesn't care about your income bracket. What it does care about is what happens next. The actual decisions, one at a time, that let it take over completely. It rarely arrives as one single big decision. That's the part that makes it so hard to catch. Nobody sits down and decides to blow a raise. Instead, it shows up as a string of small, completely reasonable choices, each one easy to justify on its own. The apartment with the extra bedroom because you can finally afford it. The takeout order on a Tuesday because you had a long day and you've earned it. The slightly nicer car because the old one was getting embarrassing anyway. None of these decisions are reckless. Taken one at a time, every single one of them makes sense. The problem is what happens when you add them all up. A household earning twice what it used to can end up saving the exact same percentage of its income as before, sometimes even less. In dollar terms, the number going into savings might actually be bigger. But as a share of what's coming in, as a measure of real progress toward financial independence, almost nothing has changed. That's the trap hiding inside lifestyle creep. It doesn't feel like falling behind because in absolute terms you're not. Your bank balance is bigger than it used to be. Your lifestyle is nicer than it used to be. But the gap between what you earn and what you actually keep hasn't closed. It's just gotten more expensive to maintain. Nobody warns you about this part because on paper, every single choice along the way looked like real progress. And this pattern doesn't only show up in ordinary households making ordinary raises. It shows up at the extreme end too, in people earning more money in a single year than most people see in a decade, and somehow ending up in exactly the same place. You've probably heard the claim, something like most professional athletes go broke a few years after retiring. It gets repeated so often, it sounds like settled fact. Usually with some dramatic number attached, 70, 80%. Take your pick. Here's the honest version. That specific number traces back to an old, uncited magazine claim from years ago, and it doesn't hold up well under scrutiny. The real research tells a calmer, more interesting story. A 2015 study, published as a National Bureau of Economic Research working paper by Carlson, Kim, Lusardi, and Kammerer, tracked NFL players drafted between 1996 and 2003. It found that close to 16% filed for bankruptcy within 12 years of retiring. 16% is still notable. It's higher than you'd expect for men who earned millions during their careers. But here's the detail that actually matters. The one that got buried under years of exaggerated headlines. How much a player earned and how long his career lasted barely moved the odds at all. A player who made $10 million over 8 seasons wasn't meaningfully safer than one who made a fraction of that in half the time. The researchers even noted that a player would have needed millions more in career earnings just to meaningfully lower his risk, which tells you the danger was never really about the size of the paycheck. Read that again. More money didn't buy protection. Longer earning windows didn't buy protection. The one variable that predicted trouble wasn't income at all. It was what happened to spending once that income arrived, and how quickly the new normal replaced the old one. That's the exact mechanism you just watched happen with the raise, the apartment, the takeout, the car. It's the same pattern, just playing out at a much larger scale, with much larger numbers attached to it. The dollar amount changes, the trap underneath it doesn't. Which means this was actually never really only a story about football. It's a story about what any of us do the moment more money starts landing in our lives. Picture 2 people, same job title, same company, same size raise landing in their accounts on the exact same day. Same starting point, same amount of extra money. From here, their paths quietly split completely. The first person does what feels natural. The raise shows up, and within a month, the apartment gets upgraded. The car payment gets a little higher. Dinners out get a little nicer. None of it feels reckless in the moment. Every choice looks like a reasonable reward for years of work. And honestly, most people around them would say the exact same thing in that position. 5 years later, this person is earning noticeably more than before, and somehow still living paycheck to paycheck, with almost nothing saved beyond what they started with. The second person does one thing differently. Before the raise ever touches their everyday spending, a fixed chunk of it gets automatically redirected into savings, into investments. Somewhere it can't quietly disappear into rent or takeout or a nicer car. Their day-to-day, everyday life barely changes at first. And to anyone watching from the outside, it might even look like nothing exciting is happening at all. 5 years later, that unglamorous decision has compounded into a very different financial position. Not because they earned more than the first person, but because their spending never fully caught up to their income. Same raise, same exact starting point, same number of years passing by. 2 completely different outcomes, and the difference isn't talent, luck, or how much either of them earned along the way. It's what happened in the quiet gap between the money arriving and the money being spent. And that gap is smaller and more fragile than most people realize, especially once other people start noticing you're doing better. Here's the honest part that rarely gets said out loud. The pressure isn't only coming from inside you. It's coming from everyone around you too. Once other people know you're earning more, something shifts, subtly but unmistakably. Friends assume you'll pick up the check without being asked. Family starts framing requests differently because you're doing well now. Your own sense of what you're supposed to look like starts adjusting too. The version of you that fits this new income bracket, dresses a certain way, drives a certain car, doesn't blink at a certain kind of bill. None of this makes you weak for feeling it. Wanting more and wanting to be seen as someone who's arrived isn't a character flaw. It's closer to instinct, the same pull that makes the hedonic treadmill so effective, just wearing a social mask instead of a psychological one. But this is exactly why lifestyle creep is so hard to catch in real time. It isn't only your own spending working against you. It's a quiet chorus of expectations, some spoken, most not, all nudging you toward the version of enough that matches your paycheck instead of your actual goals. Recognizing that pressure doesn't make it disappear, but it does explain something important. Why the second person from a minute ago, the one who redirected the raise before spending it, had to make that decision on purpose. Nothing about that choice happens automatically. Everything around you is quietly pulling in the opposite direction. So what actually works in practice? Not raw willpower alone. Willpower is exactly the thing lifestyle creep is designed to outlast, because it never asks for one dramatic decision in the moment. It just quietly happens while you're busy living your life. The pattern that tends to work instead is simpler than it sounds. Move the money before you ever see it as spendable. The moment a raise, a bonus, or a new higher paycheck arrives, a fixed portion gets redirected automatically before it ever sits in your checking account long enough to start feeling like extra you're free to use. Savings, investing, paying down debt faster. The destination matters less than the timing itself. The whole point is removing the decision from a moment when your judgment is competing against a hedonic treadmill that's already resetting your sense of normal, and against everyone around you, quietly expecting the upgrade too. This is exactly what separated the second person from the first, back when they got the identical raise. Not more discipline in some abstract sense, not a higher income, just one automated decision made once before spending ever had the chance to catch up. To be clear, this isn't a guarantee, and it isn't personalized financial advice for your specific situation. Everyone's expenses, debts, and starting point look genuinely different, and a qualified financial professional can help translate the general idea into your actual numbers. But the pattern itself is well documented. The earlier you remove a portion of a raise from your own reach, the less lifestyle creep has to work with, because it can't inflate spending on money that already left the building. It's a small, almost boring-sounding decision. It's also the entire difference between the two 5-year outcomes you just watched play out. So go back to that email. The one in your kitchen, coffee still hot. The number that was supposed to change everything. The raise was never the problem. It did exactly what a raise is supposed to do. It gave you more room. What happened next was the default response almost everyone reaches for without noticing. Letting spending quietly rise to fill that room completely, one reasonable decision at a time, until the extra space disappeared before you ever got to use it. That's not a personal failing. It's a documented pattern, one that shows up in ordinary households and multi-million-dollar careers alike, driven by a mental reset switch you didn't choose. Knowing that doesn't undo 6 months of a raise that vanished, but it changes what happens the next time money shows up unexpectedly. Because now you know where to intervene and how early that intervention needs to happen. The next raise, the next bonus, the next unexpected windfall, that's the real test. Not whether you deserve to enjoy it. You do. The test is whether you decide what happens to it, or whether your spending quietly decides for you. So here's a question worth sitting with. Think back to your last raise. What actually changed because of it? Drop the honest answer in the comments. You might be surprised how many other people are living the exact same story. And if this kind of thing is useful to you, there's more of it coming.